Hey guys, today's lesson is going to show you how to create a Frankenstein cartoon from scratch. Before you begin, you'll want to set up your canvas. Go to File, New, and we're going to make sure your dimensions or your measurement is in pixels. Choose pixels first. Then you're going to put in 500 by 500, 72 ppi. Everything else should stay as the default. When you get that created, you're going to hit Create. And now the next thing that you want to do is we want to reset our workspace to make sure that everything is in a place where we can find it. Some of the panels have been turned off. So we're going to go to Window, Workspace, and we're going to choose Reset Essentials. Next, we're going to click on the Move tool. We're going to come up to our tool preset. We're going to come over to the settings, drop down and choose Reset All Tools, and then OK. When we start this lesson, we want to I'm going to actually move my layers panel up here. When we start the lesson, we will start with a new layer. So I'm going to click the plus, and I'm going to call this one Head. And so after I have Head selected, I'm going to go in and create the base for his head. I'm going to choose a new foreground color, so 2 clicks here, and we are going to put in 197, 230, and 29. Press OK. The next thing we want to do is we want to save this color swatch, and this is something that you have not done before. We're going to click on our swatches panel. It's over here on the side. If you don't see swatches, you'll go to Window and put the check mark on swatches. At the bottom of the swatch panel, you'll see a little plus. We're going to click on that, and we're going to name this Frank Green, and then press OK. The next thing that you're going to do is go to your shape tools, and we want to get the rectangle tool. On your options bar at the top, you're going to change it. It's probably going to come up as shape. You want to change it to pixels. And then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to click in the center of your screen or your canvas. And we want to change our measurements for the head. So this is an alternate way of doing it besides eyeballing it. I want it to be 265 pixels by 265 pixels. And I want the corners of it to be have a radial corner. So I'm going to change the radii to 20. And because it was linked there, they all changed. And then I want to choose from center, and I press OK. If when you clicked in the screen on the first time, if your mouse wasn't, excuse me, at exactly the center, you may need to come back over here and adjust it. I'm going to move mine down just a little bit. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new layer, and I'm going to call this hair. I'm going to press the D key on the keyboard to get a default black color up. Then I'm going to go back to my rounded rectangle tool, or my rectangle tool. I'm going to click on the screen. Excuse me. This time, I'm going to change my dimensions. I want it to be 290 pixels by 75 pixels. I want the corners to be not quite as rounded, so I'm going to change it to 15. I'm still going to press center, and I hit OK. And this is going to be the Frankenstein's forehead, and I think I actually want to make mine a little bit taller. So I'm going to do Control T, and I want to drag this top middle handle up. But before I do that, I want to hold down the Shift key and then drag it up so it's only adjusting the height. I'm going to press OK. Now, last week you learned how to use brushes and how to set brush settings. The keyboard command for that is F5, but you can also go to Window and choose Brush Settings. Now, the reason that none of the settings are showing up right now is because I have not selected my brush tool. If I come over here to the left side of my toolbar and I choose brushes, now you'll see that you get your brushes up here at the top. I want to choose a 10 pixel brush that's round, and I want to make sure my hardness is at 100, and I can drop the spacing down if I need to. Next, I'm going to click on Shape Dynamics. I'm gonna change the control from pin pressure or off to fade. I want the length of my brush stroke to only be 15 pixels, and I want the minimum diameter to be 0. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to draw some hair that's coming off of the black rectangle. I still have black as my foreground color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw some spikes. Sometimes I try to curve the brush a little bit to give it a little bit more of a curl type feel. Depending on how far up you start your mouse will determine how long the stroke is. After you've done a few strokes like that, I'm going to go back and press F5. This time I'm going to change my brush. Maybe let's try 20. Oh no, hang on. Let's do our brush tip at 20. And this time on my shape dynamics, I'm also going to change the 15 to 20 here. So I'm getting thicker, longer strokes. You want to do some variations because you don't want the hair to all, I wrote that. You don't want the hair to all be the same length. Okay, and I think this time I want to change my brush a little bit. I think I'm going to make it thinner. And on mine I made 8 pixels. It really doesn't matter what you do. I'm going to give him a little like spiky cowlet thing going up here. You can honestly adjust the hair however you want to because this is your design. And so after you get this done, the biggest thing is we want to go back to our settings and we want to remove the fade option. Otherwise, the next time you use the paintbrush, you'll get little strokes that you don't need. I am going to go in and create another new layer. I'm going to drag this down so you guys can see a little bit. And I'm going to call this one Eyes. Okay. Now I'm going to change my foreground color, and the color that I want to choose is going to be a shade of light gray. It's not going to be a perfect gray because my numbers are not all going to be the same. The R is going to be 230, the G is 231, and the B is 232. I'm going to press OK. Now I'm going to go to my ellipse tool in my shape tools, and I'm going to draw 2 circular shapes. One's going to be a little bit bigger than the other. Now, if you're following the paper example in the instructions, I did the instructions in black so you would be able to see the size difference. Okay, so I'm going to hold, I want these to be perfect circles, so I'm going to hold down Shift as I drag. I think I want to move that one over just a little bit because I think it was not exactly where I want it to be. And then I'm going to go back to my ellipse, and I'm going to make the second one, and it's just going to be a little bit smaller. Now on this one, I probably need to move it up a little bit. I can draw a box around it and use my move and just kind of readjust it. All right, after we have our eyes created, I'm going to use the magic wand. I'm going to deselect this one first. I'm going to use my magic wand tool, so press the W key on your keyboard, and I want to select the left eye. I'm going to do Control J to make a copy of the left eye. Now I want to select whatever's inside this new layer, so I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to click on my new layer 1, and I'm going to change my foreground color again. My foreground color this time I'm going to change to a shade of purple. It's going to be 148, then 51, and then 190. So it's kind of a lighter shade of purple. I'm going to press OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in, so Alt backspace, the purple color right there. Okay. Next, I am going to go to Edit. Well, actually, let's erase this first part. So I'm going to get my eraser, and with my eyeball still selected, I'm going to get, the brush is going to be about 25 pixels, and it's going to be hard. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it goes straight across, and then I do one more streak through it. I'm going to deselect, And now what I want to do is I want to go back and click on that thumbnail so I only have the top purple part of the eye selected. I'm going to go to Edit, Stroke. I'm going to choose a black color for my stroke so I can make sure these are all at 0. I'm going to make a 1 pixel stroke. Let's choose black, 1 pixel stroke. And I'm going to, it's okay to leave it on center, and I'm going to press OK. So if I deselect, I can see that I now have a slight black circle or black lines around my eyelid. I'm going to Control T, and I just want to rotate the purple part so that it is more at a diagonal. I'm going to press my check mark or enter to commit that change. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to the brush tool, and I'm still with black on my brush, and I want to make a few details on his face. So I'm going to get a very small brush. I think I want it to maybe be 2 pixels. We'll try this first. We'll see how it works out. Do 2 pixels. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to call this one Details. And I'm also going to, I'm going to go back and add some pupils inside the eyes in a little bit. But for the details, I'm going to come across on the eyeball here, and I'm just going to make some, oops, I think that might be, that's a pretty good start. So I'm going to leave it at 2 pixels. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw some stitches here on his eyelid. I'm also going to draw kind of a scar across his forehead. Now, I think that looks a little weird because it's touching his eyeball, so I may need to go back and readjust it. The nice thing about all of this is that I can rearrange layers later and change the order of things so that they look in the right place. So I made some stitches there. I'm going to do just some lines out here to the side of his face. I'm going to draw a nose. Oh, I don't like that. Let's draw a bigger nose. That. Next, I'm going to draw a mouth. Doing some laugh lines here. And give his little chin. And so I could keep going with some more details and shading, but that's what I'm going to stick with for right now. I'm going to go back to layer 1, which was my purple eyelid. And I'm going to, I named that. Now I'm going to go back to the eyes layer, and I'm going to get a new layer. I'm going to call this pupils. I want to select a bigger brush, so I'm going to change my brush size to, that looks pretty good. And so I'm going to click here and click here. So now I've got pupils in the inside of his eye. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my details and make a new layer. And I'm going to call it teeth, or you could call it tooth, it doesn't matter. On that, I'm going to go to my rectangle, and I'm going to create a rounded rectangle that has a 30 pixel radius. I'm not really sure what the size is going to be yet, so I'm just going to kind of, whoops, let's undo that. I need to set the corners. So I do know that my rounded rectangle needs to have a 30 pixel radius corner edge so that it is much more rounded. I'm going to change my color to white. So if you're using keyboard commands, you just switch the letter by using X. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a tooth with a rounded rectangle, and then maybe I'm going to do another one down here. And because these are on their own layer, you could go back in if you think that they're too large, and we can Control T and shorten them down if they seem a little bit big. I probably want to move the teeth layer below details so that the line for the mouth overlaps. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another new layer at the top. We're going to rename this one and call it Shadow. And with the ellipse tool, I'm going to change this to ellipse. I'm going to change the foreground color one more time. It's going to be 109, 206, and 50 with a little bit darker shade of green. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to change the opacity of the tool itself to 20%. So changing the opacity of a tool only affects what you do on that layer with the tool. It does not affect the entire layer. So I'm changing this to 20. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a few circles on his face. It's just going to give some shading. They don't have to be perfect circles in this instance, and they all probably should not be the same size. I'm just going to do a few little steps there. Next, I'm going to get another new layer called bolts, and we are going to make some bolts on the side of his head. So I'm going to go back to my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to do 2 shades of gray. So the first shade of gray that I'm going to start with is going to be 208, 210, and 211. I press OK. And what I'm going to start with is I need to turn the radius back to 0. And I'm going to just come in here and make a large rectangle. I may want to move it a little bit closer to his head. And then what I'm going to do is make another one on the other side. I want the rectangles to try to be as close to even as possible. Now mine are drawing from the center going outward, and that's probably because I still have center selected somewhere in the settings. Now something else that you need to notice is that when I created my bolts, they look really light compared to my foreground color, and that's because my opacity was still at 20%. So I'm going to undo both of those bolts, and I'm going to change my opacity to 100%. That's something to be aware of whenever you go in here. And the next thing is I don't want it to come from the center, so I'm going to take that off. So now let's try drawing another bolt. That is much easier to do. And you see it's much darker. I'm going to put my cursor over here on this side. It's okay if they're not exactly the exact same shape. Now I want to change my foreground color again, and I'm going to change it to 189, no, sorry, 187, 189, and 191. So now it's a little bit lighter gray, and I'm going to make a rectangle that's going to connect the bolt to his head. Okay. You can make one bolt if you want to, and then just try to position it so it duplicates. The next thing that I like to do on the bolts is I'm going to switch to my burn tool, and I'm just going to burn on the edge of the bolt. So I'm just going to kind of click a couple of times. I probably want to get a hard brush on this time because I want this to actually show up more like a natural shape instead of shading. So when I click there, you now see that it's got a little line that goes across, and then I'm going to click on this one, and so it's got a little bit more depth to it. Anyway, that is basically how you can go in and create this Frankenstein. If for whatever reason you didn't like something that you did in the details, the cool thing about it is because everything is on a different layer, I can go back in and I can recreate any of the pictures I want or any of the shapes that I want to. So I'm going to bring the nose back down. Maybe I think a 1 pixel nose might look better. And I'm just going to draw whatever shape nose you want. Remember, if you want your line to be smoother, we can adjust smoothing up here at the top. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to do is we are going to go to File, Save As, and you're going to put this in your class folder, wherever that happens to be. And we're going to call this your name and then the word Frank. And hit Save. Now you want to export it as a PNG, so we can go to File, Export. Quick Export is PNG. The name will still stay the same, the location will be the same, possibly. And so I'm going to press Save. And so that is how you create Frank. Good luck, and you can be as creative as you want to.